Welcome to the SEMO Sports Zone presented by A-Corp Sports. My name is Drew. With me is my co-host Dave. David, how are we doing this week?
I'm doing just fine. It's a fun week of football. A lot of blowouts this week.
A lot of blowouts. Not just in high school sports. Just a small anecdote. Was Notre Dame angry about something this weekend?
Yeah, a little bit. Too bad they couldn't have saved some of those points for the week before. A lot of blowouts. A lot of just a lot of just non-competitive games this week. One very competitive game, but a lot of non-competitive though.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of disappointed about that. I was expecting this week to be more that, not really like, super competitive, but I was expecting to see more of a point differential of 14 or so.
Yeah, some of these games I thought would be a little bit closer than what they were, but it's kind of like we talked about. Your teams are kind of separating themselves from each other, and you're getting you're kind of getting a good look of the haves and the have-nots right now.
Mm-hmm. I guess just a couple of fun facts I think I like about this week is all three of the big cat teams in the area are all going 3-0.
Yeah. It's good year to be a cat, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
There's some, I got to see Dexter play for the first time in person. That was nice. They're a good team. I've seen Cape Central. They're a good team. So, Crothersville, I haven't seen them. I've seen them on video, but not in person. But yeah, all three of those teams are pretty talented.
No, it's great to see. I mean, just for narrative's sake, I mean, it's splitting them up into their separate districts too, and that's awesome to see. Just teams that can really maintain a winning streak, just going to this far into the season.
Yeah, and each one of them are doing it pretty decisively. Mm-hmm. They're making a point of, look, we're good this year, and we're gonna make a point of this. But they're definitely part of the haves for sure.
Exactly. So let's just start getting into just kind of the rundowns of this past week. New Madrid County Central at Dexter. You were at that game.
Yeah. Dexter dominated it. You can look at whatever you want to look at, but Dexter just dominated that line of scrimmage. I think I had New Madrid for a total of maybe 11 or 12 total yards for the game. I mean, they just
really,
yeah. It was. I think I had them for like a loss of 13 at the first half. That was their total yardage. It was pretty rough. Again, New Madrid had some issues with some punting, but Dexter just dominated the line of scrimmage. Both offensively and defensively, and New Madrid there was just no holes. Dexter just laid some just really tough hits on them, and there were some big hits in that game, and Dexter's very impressive. They have so many weapons. It's not just one guy. They spread the ball around. A lot of different guys do things. Devin Turnbow had a heck of a game. He had a huge hit on the running back for New Madrid, and then he had a punt return for a touchdown. Then he had a big run for a touchdown. He just does. He's kind of their big play guy. He was very impressive, but I was more impressed, I think, with the line, the offensive and defensive line for Dexter. It was just dominant against New Madrid.
No, from everything I've seen from Dexter's, they can hold everything. Like it looks like they don't even struggle at all. And I noticed, I watched a little bit of footage from this game. Jackson Howard looks even more confident than he did last week, and that's really great to see, honestly, because that's just building their team up even more.
Yeah, I'd watched the first two Dexter games on video, and then I saw him in person, and he threw it a little bit more than what he had thrown it in the first two games. But and he looks good throwing the ball. He had several drops. It could have been a lot better. There were several drops from the receivers.
Mm-hmm.
It was wet. You wear those gloves. Sometimes those gloves get wet. They get a little slick. It was just a tough night to throw the ball, but he did a nice job. I mean, he made some really nice throws, right on the money. Houston Neely made a really nice catch in the end zone for a touchdown. That ball was zipped in there, and just a really, really fine job. I mean, really, Dexter, there was no holes that I saw last, against New Madrid. Now, granted, Dexter's played Malden, Sykeston, and New Madrid. I think there's a combined one win with those three teams.
Exactly. Yeah. I think the biggest deficit for Dexter right now is their strength of schedule.
Right.
This is a very weak schedule going in. I think just we're going to have to wait until the later half of the season for them to actually be tested against teams that are even comparable.
Yeah, they've got East Prairie next week, and East Prairie is better than New Madrid. They beat New Madrid, but it was close. But I think East Prairie is a little bit better than New Madrid as far as a matchup for Dexter. Now, I'm not saying that they'll beat Dexter, but I'm just saying it's a little bit better of a matchup. I think it'll be a little bit more of a game. But then you have Southern Boone coming in, who's ranked, I think, tied for ranked 4th in the state with Park Hills Central, and then Dexter's right behind them at 6. So,
exactly.
So that's kind of the game you got to circle right there. You'll find out that game, I think, how good you really are.
And I don't think that's not to discredit Dexter at all. I just think it's more of a circumstance of just like these are the teams in the area that they have to play. I mean, if Dexter was a bigger school, it'd be the situation the Jackson's having with just having to go to different places to play teams. So I can't knock Dexter for their strength of schedule. That's just the way it falls. Yeah. But I'm excited to see what's going to happen against those bigger, like South Boone and then Park Hill Central. Definitely.
And typically these games, Sykeston and New Madrid County Central, those are games that are tough games for Dexter because, it just so happens, Dexter's up this year and both those teams are pretty down. So, it's just one of those strange years that just not just the schedule, while, you look at it, it's like, oh, it's not as easy as it might be. It's a little bit easier than what they originally anticipated just because the competition's down this year. Nothing to do with Dexter. It's just, and Dexter's taking care of business, doing what they need to do. But Southern Boone, we'll find out how good they really are.
Exactly. No, it's not a circumstance of just I think all these other teams are down, so Dexter's better, and that's just how it is. I mean, that's what the circumstance is, but that's not to take away anything from what Dexter's done so far.
Absolutely.
Next game on the listing, Sykeston at Cape Central.
Poor Sykeston.
And to Sykeston's credit, I wrote this down just because I don't have any ill will against Sykeston. They're in a rough situation. They also have 59 players, and 42 of them are freshmen and sophomores.
Right. Yeah, they're very young.
So Sykeston hasn't had a winning season since 2016. That's probably got everybody in low spirits, but you have to consider that this is a young team. They're getting their lumps in early, and they can take that to be angry again next year.
Yeah, Sykeston's going to be fine. I mean, they've took it on the chin to two of the toughest teams in Southeast Missouri. I mean, that's just a fact. Cape Central, they hate losing to Cape Central. That's a big rival. But it was inevitable. First play of the game, 77-yard touchdown pass.
Yeah, that's hard.
Yeah, it's just tough. They've got Malden coming up. That's a winnable game. And they've got a couple other winnable games on their schedule. They get out of this season 4 or 5 wins. It's up from last year. I think they had 2. So it's up from last year. It's improvement, and you're moving in the right way with a very young team. So I'm like, it's not about one game. It's about the season as a whole and just getting better and getting better. So Sykeston, I think, is going to be fine. It's just that you just had 2 teams here just right in a row that just are a lot better than what you have.
And Sykeston's schedule is tough. Like, in comparison to everybody in the area, they've got just a really miserable schedule for a young team.
Yeah, because, you're going to have Jackson, you're going to have Farmington, you're going to have Poplar Bluff. Those are tough teams, but they did kind of, it was even worse when they opened the year with Hillsboro the last couple of years, and Hillsboro playing for state titles. So you got them off the schedule, and you got Crystal City on there. You got Malden on the schedule, which is a winnable game there. Kennett's not on the schedule anymore, but that would have been a good game for them to play as well. But Sykeston's going to be fine. They're going to have some winnable games. They got New Madrid on the schedule, and New Madrid, as we just talked about, they're struggling a little bit right now. So there's winnable games for Sykeston. They're going to be fine. On the other flip side, Cape Central, they're just a wagon right now. They're just dominating everybody.
I am high on Cape Central. Cape Central is probably my favorite bigger school team to look at, and they think they could do better right now.
Right. Yeah. And they've circled that Jackson game. They've got a really tough district. We've talked about that, about how they have Cardinal Ritter, and they're going to have to get better and better if they're going to play with Cardinal Ritter. And so, I think that's kind of, they're focused in. They've got a really good defense. I'm surprised. I was actually surprised when Sykeston had points in the first half. I thought that was a win for Sykeston, as good as this Cape Central defense has played, just to get points on the board in that first half. And Cape Central is their defense is tough. A lot of talk about that offense. They can run it, they can throw it. They've got a lot of different options, but their defense is tough too. So yeah, I think they're building toward having a special year and kind of circling some bigger games on their schedule where it's going to be important for them to play very well in those games.
Yeah, narrative wise, that offense looks incredible. They are outscoring their opponents 133-16. Those 16 points just from that Sykeston game. Yeah. I wasn't hoping for a 0 game. But I kind of was just for that narrative of just like, Cape Central's doing perfect. But Cape Central looking great. This is their first 3-0 season since 2017 to start it out. So they're doing great. I hope they keep going. I hope they get to that point where they can start beating these bigger teams that they're looking at.
Yeah, I think that Jackson game is going to be the interesting one. I think Cape's going to be able to take care of their schedule, with the exception of maybe that Jackson game. And that Jackson game, is looking a lot more winnable each week. So, I think that, Cape's, they've got a good team, and they just got to, they're like Dexter. Both of those teams just kind of have to keep checking the boxes and just keep improving, because you're going to have some challenges coming up.
I would love to see Cape play Dexter. I don't know how that game would go. That might be a blowout. Who knows? But Dexter looks good this year. Cape looks great this year. That's a dream matchup for me to watch.
Yeah, Dexter that'd be a tough matchup, but for Dexter, but I think it would be a good game. I don't think it would be. It certainly wouldn't be. I don't think a huge blowout or anything.
Next up, Malden at Charleston ended that game 20-54.
Yeah, I've been preaching Charleston all year, saying that they're better than what people think. They scored in all three phases of the game: the offensively, defensively, special teams. They've got some good players. They've got a lot of different weapons. Trez Clark had a pretty good night, had over 100 yards. Kirby, their quarterback, he threw for 119 yards and had a score. They've got this guy named Bernard Betts, and he does a little bit of everything for them. He can return punts. They'll hand him the ball some in a running game. They'll throw him the ball. He just does a lot of different things for them. Is very active and is extremely athletic and just makes things happen. And they've got some weapons there. Their offensive line is a little bit overlooked, but it's not bad. So they're a team that they're not bad, and I think they're 2-1 now. So I'm like they're continuing to, and they're just kind of flying under the radar a little bit, but they're a pretty good team.
2-1 and under big margins too. Their past 2 wins have been pretty high scoring. Malden, on the other hand, I think they're starting to get a flow down in some places, especially so they passed a lot.
Yeah.
Looks like 8 for 18 attempts with 196 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. For a rebuild period, that's not terrible numbers, especially for this game. I think Malden they're still in the struggle phase of just like, we don't really know our identity, we're figuring it out. And after the past few seasons, that's completely understandable. Malden has a couple winnable games, I think. We'll talk about that Sykeston game. I think those are 2 teams that it's going to be competitive. I would say that. So I don't know how the morale situation is in Malden right now, but I think it's getting better.
Yeah, I mean, it's Malden is. I don't know what to think of Malden yet. I mean, they're we talked about Sykeston being a young team. Malden's a very young team. They've got a lot of new coach, new kind of philosophy. We talking about they're throwing the ball a lot. You want to see them be able to run. I think they only were able to gain like 9 yards on the ground on just 13 carries. I think you want to see them be able to run the ball a little bit more, just because, when you're throwing it, if you're not completing those passes, that's a lot of quick 3 and outs. Clock's not running.
Exactly.
I think in some of these games, you want to shorten that game a little bit. You really need to be able to run. But that Malden's kind of went, hey, we're going to throw the ball. We're going to throw it all over the place. And you're going to get some teams with that. I mean, you're going to get some big plays, but you're also kind of going to put your defense behind the 8 ball from time to time. You just have to be ready for that. I hope they do have some winnable games, and I just want to continue to see them improve. For them, it's I said it early in the year. It's not about wins and losses for Malden necessarily. It's just about keeping that morale up, because you're going to get better. Mm-hmm. So just kind of keep that morale up. Don't lose the team. Keep the team together. And just make it fun. So if passing the ball is what makes it fun for them, then keep it where they're enjoying playing, and then then you build on that in the next few seasons as you come out. Coach Pulley will do a good job with them, and he's very good about keeping morale up and things like that. So I think they're going to be fine.
Yeah, I mean, hang your hat on this. Every game they've played this season, they've just gotten better.
Yeah.
as far as that scoreboard goes.
And there's no quit. If you watch their games, there's no quit at the end of the game. You know, you don't see kids who are just, hanging their head. They're letting guys just run past them. No, there's none of that. There's no quit. So, and that's one thing you like to see whenever you have a team who's kind of struggling a little bit.
No, that's good. It's something like, especially coming from the past 2 years where they didn't even finish the season. It's good to see that morale is still there where, guys, it's a rebuild and you have to take it for that. Play now so your teammates can play later.
Right. Yeah. It's build it now for the kids coming up. And I think Mullins has the right mindset so far. We'll see as the year goes on. It's a long year. We're just 3 weeks in, but right now so far, I like what I'm seeing out of Malden.
Moving on. So this game is kind of more of a surprise for me, I guess. Jackson at Edwardsville.
Man, I keep putting Jackson number one on my polls, and I know they're playing tough teams. Edwardsville is better than any team in Southeast Missouri, but they just don't look good when they're playing these good teams. They just don't look good at all. I don't know. I'm just not. I'm losing some feeling for Jackson here. I just don't. I'm just not seeing what I thought I might see. And, it's just an uncompetitive game. That game was, they threw 3 picks early and that game was just not competitive.
No, and that was hard to watch. I mean, that on my notes, I tried to write it quarter by quarter, but it pretty much just been more of the same. Edwardsville got a touchdown. Jackson turns it over. And that's hard to watch.
Yeah, and Edwardsville they're a good team. They've got some D1 kids on that team. They're really good. But we kind of had some expectations for Jackson. Right now, I don't think Jackson can compete for a state title. I mean, I don't think they're going to. I think they're going to struggle to get out of their district. I don't. And again, they're playing some really tough teams, so it's kind of tough to gauge. Maybe they're kind of shutting it down a little bit. Against saving it up for the teams like in Southeast Missouri, but yeah, they just don't look very good right now, and they've got some stuff that they really need to fix, and we'll find out a lot more about them this week. Coming up, I think they've got Farmington. We'll find out more about them this week and in coming weeks. But man, they're right now. I'm just not liking what I'm seeing. Yeah,
and that's a hard thing too. It's just like playing these out of state teams. It's really hard to gauge how you are. Even in your own district. I mean, they're last in their district standings right now. And that it doesn't seem like it would be that way. But, Class 6, that's difficult to play in.
Yeah, it's not an easy class. And I tell you what, they're going to have to play a lot better than what they're playing. And I don't know, I don't know what's happened from last year to this year. I know they've got a lot of kids that are back. I don't know. I just don't know. I mean, again, Edwardsville is very good. They have a really, really talented team. Cardinal Ritter, a very talented team. So I don't want to get too ahead of my skis here and just be like, oh no, they're not. They're just not good. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that at all. I just don't like what I'm seeing as far as the turnovers and just kind of the way some of the play has gone in a couple of these games. But I realize I didn't pick them to win the game. I didn't think they would win the game. I thought they would be a little more competitive, and I thought they'd be a little more competitive against Cardinal Ritter, and they weren't. So I think that's where my skepticism on this team's coming in.
Yeah, I think that's fine. Going into that healthy lens of skepticism with Jackson now, I think that's okay. Just because, hey, they could win the rest of their season,
right?
And I'd totally justified in saying, I was wrong. It's whatever.
Yeah, they win out. I'll be like, that's what I expected to see. That's what Edwardsville and Cardinal Ritter are just that good.
Mm-hmm.
Hope we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, every week's a new week, so you got to take it on the chin when these situations happen. But I think they can pick it up, especially with some of the teams they're going to be playing. Yeah. Moving on, Confluence Prep at Portageville.
Portageville pretty much dominated that game. I mean, it was a little close early. They kind of, it took a while to pull away, but Jay Bogan had another good game. I think 160 yards, a couple touchdowns. Antonio Higginbottom, I think is how you say his last name, Higginbottom. But yeah, he had a good game. He had especially early on in that game, he had some good runs. They're just going to wear you down. Their defense is strong. They don't give up much. It's just a very, I'm surprised for what I'm seeing this year. But again, we talked about lost a lot of seniors from last year's team, but we didn't really know what was behind because those seniors kind of took a majority of the reps. And now you've got these younger guys, and these younger guys are pretty talented too. And that's just a good football team.
No, if you'd have told me that these kids coming in weren't getting the reps that their seniors were, I would never have known it.
Yeah.
They're playing super hard-nosed football, and they're succeeding at it. I love to watch that too, just because, Portageville in the past couple years, Ian Penrod's like scheming and solutions have really worked for them, and they're just carrying that over. Yeah. Coach Rayfield, I mean, coming into this position as on this coaching carousel, he's exceeding expectations too. So very good for Portageville.
Yeah, a lot of their stuff is kind of the stuff that they had last year, and they ran under Penrod, and it's just like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And they're it's not broke. It's working for Portageville. They are a good football team. Very solid. They're not outstanding at anything. It's just they're just really, really solid across the board. Very solid defensively. They're just very fundamental. They make they're in the right spots. They make the tackles that they need to make. Offensively, they're going to run the football. They're going to run it, and when they're done running, they're going to run some more, and then they're going to run a play action and burn you on a pass.
Exactly.
And they're just a very, very solid football team.
No, exciting to see. I can't wait to see them in action this coming week. That's the game that we're going to be covering is Scott City at Portageville, so very excited for that.
Yeah, that'll be a good game.
Moving on, Chaffee East Prairie, final score 21-52.
Yeah, East Prairie just kind of had their way with Chaffee. East Prairie's, like I said a little bit earlier, they're a pretty good team. I mean, they're well coached. They're going to try to do the ground and pound a little bit. That may be a problem against Dexter this week, offensive line wise. They kind of struggled against Scott City, weren't able to. The offensive line had some issues there, but they're going to have their offensive line just had their way with Chaffee. Tavion Bogan, 237 yards, 5 touchdowns on the ground. I mean, he had a heck of a night. And then Chaffee, on the other hand, they kind of hurt themselves. 160 yards in penalties, 5 turnovers. You can't do that when you're playing a team that's probably a little bit better than you to start with. Chaffee's got some work to do. They were able to get some points there, especially in the second half. They were able to make some things happen and make some plays, but it was a little too late there for Chaffee.
I don't know how young of a team Chaffee is exactly, but when you're really struggling with those fundamentals, that's something that's going to be hard to carry into next season too. That's something you got to really drill out of you at that point.
Yeah, they lost a lot of seniors off their team last year that really were big players for them, and so they're kind of, I think they're still trying to find their roles in this year with some newer guys, and Coach Rayfield, Coach Rayfield. But their coach does a really nice job of doing, of getting their run game. He really wants to run the football and run it and control the line of scrimmage. But I don't know if they have those guys to control the line of scrimmage this year. And so I think they're trying to find a little niche there that and they haven't been able to find it yet.
Looking forward. I mean, I hope they can do that. I don't know how tough their schedule is going to be in comparison to all these teams around us, but
it eases up a little bit. They were in the SEMO conference there for a long time and having to play some Haytais and stuff like that they didn't want to play. They've kind of eased it up a little bit. They're playing, I think they play Ballard this week out of Kentucky, and they've got some other games on their schedule that are going to be a little more their pace. So Chaffee's going to be okay.
Yeah, I took a look at Ballard. I don't really know anything about them much more than what Max Preps just told me, but they're a 2-2 team. They're a Class 1 team, so it should be comparable at least. Moving on, Carlisle at Crothersville.
Well, Crothersville is another team that you can call a wagon. They're just kind of just dominating everybody right now. They are, they're very athletic, and that game was wet. We were all, different games. We had some rain, but it looked like their field was really wet, and they had a lot of rain there. Especially at the end of the game, whenever I was watching it, it seemed like they had a lot of rain, but it didn't impact them at all. They were able to run the ball. I think they only threw like 3 passes, but they were just able to run. And Sammy Bryant had a really nice game. I think he had 5 touchdowns. He had a really impressive 83-yard run there. He's good. Of course, Jermonte Alexander, I talk about him, it seems like every week. He's just a phenomenal player for them. They're just They're really good. They're a really good football team, and I tell you what, them and Valley Catholic are going to be it's going to be a battle for that Class 2 District 1 title. I think between those two very good football teams.
No, I think Crothersville has been a sleeper team. You wouldn't think it, just judging by the 3-0 record and the games they've won. But I still think some people are overlooking them as a team. Valley Catholic, of course, that's a team that everybody wants to beat.
Right.
But is anybody expecting Crothersville to do it? I don't know, but I think they could. Absolutely.
Yeah. I tell you right now, my money's on Crothersville right now. But there's a lot to go. You've got to stay healthy. But they're very athletic and they're fast. Boy, they get some of these guys the ball and they're just gone. And you really you got to have some speed to match them, and they're good across the lines, which that's a common theme. If you have a good line in football, and especially high school football, you're going to have some success. And Crothersville's having a lot of success so far, and they're I think that's just going to continue.
No, great to see from them. Next up, Kelly at Rolla.
Kelly, that's a long way. It's a long way to drive to take a beating. It's just. Rolla is just a bigger school, and I don't know a lot. I couldn't find out a lot about what happened in this game, but I know that the score didn't show out too well for Kelly.
No, Rolla is a Class 5 team.
Yeah.
I really didn't know much about Rolla going into this either, but yeah, that's a tough score to walk away from, especially a third of the way through the season.
Yeah, you drive up all that way. I mean, and again, Rolla is a Class 5 program. I mean, they're Kelly's Class 2. It's a big difference there, but. Hopefully you learn from it a little bit. You stay healthy, and then you get back down here. You've got a winnable game coming up this week, and Kelly. I think Kelly will get back on track. Coach Powers does a nice job with them, and they're never Typically they play a lighter schedule, and this year they've got some tough teams on their schedule, so they've kind of beefed up their schedule a little bit. I think trying to help them more toward district time whenever they get in district, maybe be a little bit tougher, but it's tough to drive all that way and then kind of get it handed to you like that.
Yeah. I mean, if it's necessary, it's necessary. I mean, like you said, moving into districts, you want to toughen up your schedule just a little bit, just to know what your competition's kind of going to be like. So a loss is a loss, but I think Kelly's going to be fine.
Yeah, you move on from that one. Just erase it, move on. Hopefully, you had a good trip, had some fun on the trip, and then you kind of focus in for this week.
Exactly. Moving on, St. Genevieve at Kennett, 26-3.
Kennett's got they've got some problems. They've got a lot of injuries, and they were kind of struggling offensively to start with. It's just a tough. Kennett's in a tough place right now. They've got to find something. They got to get some guys healthy, they're playing a lot of younger guys. So you at this point you're just trying to find some positives for Kennett. They're St. Genevieve's also not a fun place to go play. I was kind of impressed with Kennett defensively to hold St. Gen to I think just 26. So that's kind of a win. For them. I mean, they played fairly well defensively, but they've not been able to find any offense all year, and they've got to find something, and it's not helping when your quarterback gets hurt and you've got other guys injured on that offense, and you just got to figure something out.
Yeah, it's unfortunate to see. On my list of positives for Kennett every week, I was like, well, they got some defensive stops that look pretty good. But
yeah, I think defensively they're okay, but it's just when your offense isn't helping you out, it's just eventually you're going to be, that dam's going to break eventually. And that's kind of what's happening. And Kennett's just again, I think first thing for them is just get some guys healthy, and then you go from there.
Moving on, I want to talk about this game really quick. St. Vincent versus Perryville.
That seemed like that was a fun game.
That was a roller coaster.
Yeah, that was a back and forth game. I'm actually kind of surprised at Perryville. I saw Perryville last year against Sykeston in districts, and Perryville saw Perryville against New Madrid, and I was not very impressed. I mean, I know they had a decent record, but I just didn't think they were very good. They weren't very fast. They didn't tackle well. They had some good players here and there, but I just wasn't very impressed. But apparently they've improved over the summer. They're St. Vincent, we've already seen what St. Vincent can do. They're a very good football team, and they had St. Vincent on the ropes, and somehow, some way, St. Vincent was able to climb out of there and get a win, and it was a sloppy game, a lot of mud, a lot of that would have been a fun game to be at.
No, I mean, judging from that final score, and I think at the half, Perryville was up, I want to say 19
nothing, I think.
Which is, I mean, when I heard that score, I was just like, that's insane. What's St. Vincent doing?
Yeah, sometimes you hear scores like, I think they got that reversed. And that's kind of what I was thinking. And then I saw the highlights after the game, and I'm like, wow, that's pretty, I know St. Vincent has a good team, and, so Perryville, and that's a big rivalry game too, in-town rivalry. So but it was a really nice, a really nice game from Perryville, but it's probably a game that you hate to lose. I think they would probably think that they had that game. And St. Vincent, again, some way, somehow, they were able to get out of there with that win.
No, good for St. Vincent. Their schedule seems pretty, I don't want to say laxed, but I think they've kind of got the rest of their schedule down on a lock at this point.
Yeah, they look like they can roll into the playoffs. Now, again, you got to stay healthy, and I don't know health of that if there may have been some guys got injured against Perryville or something. That's why that game was the way it was, or anything. I didn't do too deep of a dive into that game, but if you're St. Vincent and you look like you have a pretty clear path now into districts and able to make a pretty good run here.
So next game, a game that everybody thought was going to end up one way, turned out the other. Hayti at Scott City.
I was very surprised with this game. I kept hearing scores. I'm like, well, halftime score, Scott City had a little lead. Okay, they'll probably pull away in the second half. Kind of grind out the game a little bit, and that wasn't the case. Hayti's they've got some athletes, and we've been saying that all year.
I finally feel vindicated.
You have been on them all year.
And they did exactly what I thought they were going to do with their first two games of the season. Was they pushed that athleticism up. They finally got some cohesion on their line and everything too. That was their biggest deficit against Portageville, especially, was the pocket just kept collapsing. They finally got a chance to just huck it downfield, and it worked out for them. And also their run game looked great too.
Yeah, I tell you what, that Isaiah Love, he's got some wheels. He's tough. I think he had 3 scores, but I was impressed with their quarterback, little J.C. Ford. And little, he's not big.
He's 5'8".
Yeah, he's not big at all. Not real muscular. He's kind of a skinny 5'8", and boy, he can make things happen. He's got
wheels for sure.
He's got wheels and he's got an arm, and he's a heck of a player, and he's fun to watch. And then Alexander, I think Jamari Alexander, he's a really nice player as well. They've got some good players, and they've got some youth. So I tell you what, you might want to, if you're in Class 1, kind of keep an eye on Hayti in the coming years. They're going to be a problem.
No, that's what we've kind of all been saying around the office. It's just like, oh, here it is. Like, we kind of thought this might be showing up, but it's finally the glimmers of what we think the next 2 years are going to be like are starting to show themselves, and that's really exciting to see.
Right, and when you're young, Coach Robinson just back taking over. When you're young like that, a lot of inconsistency, and that you'll have that. And, as the season goes on, you expect them to be a little more consistent. And as that happens, they're going to win a lot more games. And then that just kind of feeds into the next year and the next year. So, Hayti, the future is very bright there, and they're a very good win for Hayti. And I expect to see more of that this year.
And no discredit to Scott City. They had some great plays in this game too. I was really surprised with honestly the throwing on both sides of on the field. Hayti had some great throws, but Scott City did too. And the run game could be better, but you could see them pushing through the line as much as they kind of wanted to. Towards the end of the game, this was something I noticed. I don't know if morale was just low or what. Defensively, it kind of just seemed like they just stopped in some places where it's like, no, make a tackle, but they just slow down. I didn't get that, but who knows?
Yeah. I don't know. But, I tell you what, Hayti, you look at Hayti's schedule, and Hayti, they start out the year with Thayer. Thayer's always good. Then they played Portageville. It's like, okay, well, we didn't know much about Portageville, but Portageville looks like they're really good. So, their 2 losses are actually to 2 pretty legit teams. Mm-hmm. And so, and then you play Scott City, who we know is good as well, and they beat them. So, I think Hayti is a lot better. And like I said, you've been on them from the beginning. I think Hayti is a lot better than what people were giving them credit for, and just didn't realize how good Thayer and Portageville were to start the year off. And, they hung with Portersville for a while before Portersville kind of pulled away. So, that score was not quite indicative of how close that game was. Then you talk about Scott City. There's just too many mistakes. Just too many mistakes in that game for them to win. Underwood still looks good, but just too many mistakes.
No, I think that's and Coach Bo said he said I'm just more disappointed in us at this point. Which I mean that's understandable. This was a loss that I feel like you kind of came in with a little more swagger than you probably should have. Of just like we got this game, it's a lock. And like I said, Scott City in some places looks really good. In other places, they did not look great at all. They would, like I said, their defense just seemed to stop towards the end of the game, and that's I don't know what that's about. But I think you're gonna have to pick that up. You're gonna have to come in this week angry at this point.
Yeah, you don't want that at all. And you got a tough game this week coming up. But it happens. They're 16, 17, 18-year-old kids. They go in expecting to win a game. Heck, it happens in college. Just look at Notre Dame. I mean, they have a great win, come out the next week and expect to win, and they don't show up. It happens at all levels, and it's it's just something that you've got to fight through. And I think Scott City, we're going to see what they're made of this week. We'll see how they come out because, like you said, defensively you can't just stop. You got to continue to fight, and so we'll see what kind of fight they have this week whenever they play Portersville.
Moving on, that's a good segue into power rankings for this week. My number one, still for the third week in the row, is Cape Central.
Man, I've been sitting here. I have it written down. I have my top 10 written down. But I'm going to switch it. I'm going to go to Cape Central number one because I'm just not impressed. Jackson's not earned a number one. I can't go on what they've done last year, the year before. I can't do that. I'm going to put Cape Central at my number one as well.
And Cape Central is finally converted, Dave.
I don't know if I've always said they're good. I think Jackson's lost me. I think Jackson is just started to lose me as the power I thought they might be, and so. They're still up there, but I just don't have a number one.
No. Jackson's my number two.
Yeah, Jackson's my two.
I'm starting to debate too. If at this point I should just list Cape Central and Jackson as 1A, 1B, and then move on from there because this is where they always end up.
I think Cape Central's earned it. I think Cape Central's earned the top spot. They've played well. They've done what they're expected to do. They've played well in all three of their games. Jackson has not. Jackson has not played well in two of the three games. So, I mean, whenever I'm trying to sit here and decide, okay, well, who's it going to be? I mean, I think Jackson may beat Cape Central when they play, but that doesn't mean that they need to be number one because they haven't played like a number one for this area. So, like I said, I'm going to go Cape Central 1, Jackson 2, then Dexter, a very solid number 3.
Yep, same for me. Dexter looks as dominant as they have the entire season. That this is 3 weeks of definite wins, and I don't know. I can't really see any weaknesses that Dexter has currently.
Yeah, definitely not. They had a few penalties that kind of hurt them, but I mean that's just nitpicking. I mean, their kids are there's going to be penalties, and obviously coaches are going to want to clean that stuff up. But so far they've I say it each week. They just check your box, and they're checking their boxes. They've got a game against East Prairie this week. That'll be, I think, a little bit tougher than maybe their first 3 games, but I don't think it's going to be I don't think that's going to be a close game against a team that matches up even with them. So you just check your boxes, and I think they're doing that. They're just moving on along and just going down their schedule, and that's what you got to do.
Exactly. My number 4, I have taken the Portersville Bulldogs.
I went with Crothersville. I still am on them. I think they're state ranked. They're very good. They're going to be tough to stop in Class 2. They're just good, and I like them. I've kind of been on. That's kind of the team I've kind of been on a lot this year, and I like Crothersville. They're a good team. I wish they played Dexter. Man, I wish they played Dexter this year. I know. The one year they don't. But I tell you what, they're a good football team. And then my number 5 is Portersville.
See, I think it's interesting because like ours is completely reversed. My number 4 is Portersville. My number 5 is Crothersville, and I think they're very comparable teams at this point. Crothersville's very athletic. They can run the ball, and they're very fast with it. Portersville, like we said, they've got their fundamentals down. They can block a run, and they can run it too. So I think comparably, they're kind of on that same wavelength.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's close. I mean, I'm not certainly not It's not just just hands down Crothersville, but it's just definitely, those two. I don't know if they play each other this year on the schedule. I'm trying to, don't have it in front of me, but I'm trying to think.
If they do, it's later in the season.
Yeah, it's got to be later. It'd be a fun game. That would kind of, it would settle this, but I think it'll be all settled in the future. But Crothersville is just taking care of their business, and they're just blowing teams out. Portersville for the most part is too. I mean, their scores are not as high as Crothersville, but they also don't have the explosive offense that Crothersville has. They're more of a ground and pound. We're going to grind you out. So two kind of different styles there, but they're both very good football teams.
Yeah, I'd love to see what that Crothersville offense can do against Portersville's defense, because Portersville seems like they're kind of more of that constrictor kind of defense of just like, we'll get points where we can, but we're really just going to try and wear you down.
Right.
My number 6 is Charleston.
See, I'm going completely different here. I'm going Hayti. I think Hayti over Scott City, that was a big win. I think, and like I said a minute ago, their losses are against two really good teams. Mm-hmm. And so I've got Hayti up there at 6, and I think they're good, and I think they're going to get a lot more wins.
See, I took Charleston just because I've seen Charleston's wins and the point margins that they're winning by, and I think they're still a really good team. Hayti is my number 7, directly behind them, just because of all the reasons that you said. That win over Scott City, that's kind of a proving thing for them. The losses against the teams, I already just talked about Portersville. I'm high on them, so that loss to Portersville doesn't really surprise me, but it is like that game could have gone much differently if Hayti was a little more buttoned up like they were against Scott City.
I've got Scott City as my number 7. I mean, I know that they just lost to Hayti, but they've had 2 really good wins. And, that game against Hayti, if you come out and you're just not ready to play, that happens. They're kids. So we'll see if this week we'll kind of see how they stack up. I think a lot of their ranking for me will depend on how they play this week against Portageville. But I've got them at number 7, and I've got East Prairie at number 8.
I also have East Prairie at number 8.
I think East Prairie I think they're a good football team, and I think they're coming on. And it's a tough one to play this week against Dexter, but you get in there, you learn, and then you see how the rest of your schedule stacks out. But I think East Prairie I think they're a good team, and they're well coached. So I got them at 8.
Yeah, no, I think for all the same reasons that you just said, that's why I put them at number 8. Their wins look good, mm-hmm. But not in the spectacular fashion that the teams further up on the list are. My number 9 is Scott City, just for the reasons kind of you said. They dropped a little for me. Mm-hmm. They're still a good team, and the teams they're going to be playing. This Porterville game is really going to kind of show me what they really got going on. I think they can button up, and they can do something. This is just going to be a much tougher game for them.
Right. My number 9 is Kelly. Even though they've kind of took it on the chin to Scott City and Rolla here, they did beat Charleston, and you've got Charleston. I think is 6 or 7 on yours.
Yeah, I've got them at 6.
And so I mean that's a good win for Kelly. And so because of that, I've got Kelly at 9. And I've got Charleston at 10, which is a little bit low. I feel like Charleston should be higher, but they lost to Kelly, and if Kelly's my 9, then I think Charleston's got to be my 10, and I'm sure they'll get fired up about that. But I mean, I just do. I just think that, and Charleston can really jump this week if they, they're playing Crowsville. They can really take a jump this week if they could win that game, or at least play them close. Even I mean, that's a tough game for Charleston, but I got them at my number 10.
I took Kelly as my number 10, and this was kind of just more of a position of just like, I don't really know who to put here. Not that Kelly looks bad at all, but that was a big loss, and that really dropped them for me a little bit. But they're still on the fringes of, they can come back, and absolutely. But, this far into the season, the disparity between teams is starting to grow a little bit. So I think my top 10 is going to shift more this coming week.
Yeah.
Probably more than any week coming up, I would say.
Yeah, there's some games on here that are going to have a definite impact on this top 10 for sure. But right now, I think there's like 10 teams that even have a say for the top 10, and then there's the others that don't. There's no, I really don't feel that they have an argument yet. You're going to have to earn your way back into that top 10 argument.
Mm-hmm. And for me, right now, it's kind of my top 5 is pretty sequestered, and it is pretty locked in. my 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10.
Yeah,
it's kind of just in a soup of just like who can pull out against each other.
Yeah, just reach in a hat and pull a name out, really. I mean, they're all kind of, it'll sort itself out as the year goes on. But right now, 6 through 10 for me, I mean, there's a very small margin between 6 and 10. Obviously, Hayti and Charleston, there's a very small margin between my 6 and 10 for sure, and all the teams in the middle.
So moving on, let's take a look at some of the games next week. Starting off, Dexter at East Prairie.
We talked a little bit about that. I think Dexter wins this. I think East Prairie is going to be a little bit of a tougher challenge for them than the other games have been, but I still think Dexter should win this game. You're playing at East Prairie. It's not always an easy place to play, but it's East Prairie's going to pack the place. But, I think Dexter's going to have too much on the offensive and defensive lines. I think they're going to be able to move East Prairie around, and I think they're going to be able to control the line of scrimmage and win this game.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the biggest part about this is that East Prairie's, with their new coaching situation and the kind of new philosophy they're taking in, this is going to be a game that's kind of, I don't want to say it's going to prove it for them. I think that Chaffee game just proved it for them, because people in East Prairie were excited about that win, and good for them. Win's a win. But I think this Dexter, I mean, this is one of the best Dexter's teams we've seen in a long time. And I think them coming in to this game, you're just going to have to know that, like, they're probably not going to take it easy on you either. They played their starters all throughout that Sykeston game. I don't see why they wouldn't do that now, just to get more reps in. Yeah,
and you've got a game against Southern Boone coming up. Dexter did have a couple guys who left in the second half. They were kind of maybe a little dinged up or not. They brought them out real quick, so you weren't sure. I don't know what their availability is. They didn't look like major injuries, but you never know if you're dinged up. So maybe they don't play against East Prairie, or something, just to give them a day, a day off. If you're Dexter, you don't want to. There's always a fine line between you're playing your starters and not. And I know Dexter played a lot. They played everybody against New Madrid in that second half. But there's always a fine line. I've always been of the mindset of don't worry about the other team. You just you do what you need to do. If you need to play your starters for 4 quarters, you play your starters for 4 quarters. Don't let up. And it's the other team's job to stop you. And, that's, you don't want to just completely embarrass anybody, but you've got to take care of your own team, and you've got to look at your schedule, and you know your team more than anybody. And Coach Jamerson knows what he has to do to get his team ready to play these Southern Boone games, Park Hill Central games. And so I don't ever worry about you playing your starters, against Sykes in the whole game or whatever. If you don't like it, stop them. And that's just where I've always been.
Exactly. And I guess good narrative coming into this is Coach Jamerson's return to East Prairie, just to see what that's going to be like.
Yeah, East Prairie reunion there, because Coach Acock was a former head coach there. He's on the Dexter staff now too. So you got a lot of former East Prairie coaches there. There'll be a lot of there's going to be a lot of fans on both sides and a lot of friends. I think this is a good opponent for each other. I think that it's not like a not feisty rivalry or anything. I guess that's kind of what I'm looking for. It's just there's no bad blood. I think there's 2 teams that I think wish each other well, except when they're playing each other.
Exactly. Not to shot call scores too much, but I'm going to try. I'm going to say Dexter 40, and I'm going to say East Prairie. They might get 8 on them.
Yeah, I'm not good at picking scores, but I'll say Dexter wins by a few scores. I'm not. I won't pick any points, but I think it's going to be tough for East Prairie to score. I really do. I think that Dexter defense is really solid, and if they control that line of scrimmage, it'll be tough for East Prairie to score.
Moving on, Sykeston at Malden.
This is the wouldn't it be funny game for Malden. I mean, wouldn't it be funny if Sykeston kind of pushes their coach out the door, and then Malden comes in and with that coach and wins? I don't think it's going to happen. I think Sykeston wins this game. I think they just have just a little more depth and a little more talent. They're a little, I don't think this is going to be a huge blowout game. I think Malden sticks with them for a while, but I think ultimately Sykeston has more and pulls it out. I think their quarterback there does a good job in Baker. I think he's going to do a good job getting the ball out to his receivers, and I think Keen Atkins, he's a strong runner. They've just got some. I think Sykeston just has a little more than Malden. I think they win this game.
So, to your point, I mean, this is a class difference game too. Yeah. Sykeston coming in at Class 4, they've got so much more on their bench than Malden has, and Malden plays as hard as they can, but you can tell by the end of the game they are all gassed. Like they put their everything into it, which is honestly great to see. I think you should do that. But if this is a morale game, I think it's going to be closer than anybody would think it is. I mean, I can't see Sykeston taking this over by more than maybe 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's about that is what I would have to handicap it as, but probably a couple scores. But Malden's going to hit some shot plays. You know, Malden will get it. You know, 1 or 2 shot plays on Sykeston. I'm pretty sure. But I just think Sykeston is just going to be too strong for them. It's going to be hot. I think I looked at the weather. It's going to be a hot night, and that's going to play into Sykeston's hands as well, because they're going to be able to sub out a little more liberally than Malden. So yeah, I think Sykeston wins this game by a few scores.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I would like Malden to win this game. No real bias either way, though. But Malden's a young program. I'd like to see them get a win under their belt this season, and especially break that 2 years now without winning a game.
Yeah, 2 or 3. But yeah, I think Malden gets a win this year. I just don't think it's this one.
Moving on, Farmington at Jackson.
Well, here we go. I mean, Farmington is not a terrible team. I mean, they're a pretty good team. So we're going to see what Jackson has. You know, Farmington has kind of given Jackson a little bit of a struggle here the last few years. I mean, they're kind of a tough team to play. They run that kind of a wing tee offense. They're very ground oriented, and so they can cause you some problems. They'll grind the clock out a little bit. Your offense is off the field if you can't get stops. I mean, this is going to show what Jackson's made of, what Jackson has as you get into Southeast Missouri opponents, and I'm going to take Jackson by a couple scores. I'm just going to think that Jackson is going to be kind of maybe not fully what we expected of Jackson, but a little bit of what we expected Jackson. I think they win by a couple scores.
As far as expectations go, I think Jackson needs to win this game. I think every game at this point in their schedule is a need to win game, just to prove that narrative. No, we're still Jackson.
Yeah, Jackson expects. I mean, I think their fans expect to win these games. I mean, they may not expect to win those games against Edwardsville and Cardinal Ritter, but they certainly expect to win SEMO conference games, and they expect to beat the teams down around this area. So, we'll see how they do. But I think they're going to come out and they're going to be fine. But I thought that before. I thought they'd play Edwardsville a little bit closer, but I think Jackson wins by a couple scores. And until I see different, then that's kind of what I'm going to go with here.
Yeah, I mean, if this is another situation, kind of like Cardinal Ritter, of just coming back in angry at yourself, I think Jackson can definitely take it and look fine doing it. But we'll have to see. Cape Central at Poplar Bluff.
This one's, I think, Poplar Bluff always plays Cape Central well. Always. It's just I think they beat Cape Central last year, if I'm not mistaken, up at Cape Central on homecoming. And then it's Poplar Bluff is not going to be a pushover. It's going to be the toughest team that Cape Central's played so far. I do think they win. I don't think Poplar Bluff is going to be able to outscore them whenever it comes down to it, because I think Cape Central with their defense is going to get the stops that they need to get to win this game by. I'm going to say they win it by 10 points.
Yeah, I was thinking kind of the same thing, is that this is going to be the first more difficult game for Cape to play. I mean, they're kind of in that same situation that Dexter's been in, as we've talked about. It's just strength of schedule. These first 3 games have just been not really, I don't want to call them wash games, but yeah, you're just going out there just to suit up and play at this point. But this game against Poplar Bluff is really going to show, okay, no, this isn't a rollover team. You actually have to play them. And I think Cape's going to win. Definitely. But like you said, the margin's going to be much more narrow than the rest of the teams they played this year.
Yeah, Poplar Bluff, Poplar Bluff's a good team. And again, those 2 teams always play close games. And, it's just, I don't know what it is about it brings out Poplar Bluff's not afraid of Cape Central. Cape Central's not afraid of Poplar Bluff. It's just a pretty good matchup usually every year. So I'm going to, I think it'll be same this year.
Next game, New Madrid County Central at Herman.
New Madrid probably has some problems playing against Herman. Herman's a pretty good team. They've got a D1 defensive end. It's going to be a 3.5 hour, 4 hour drive up there on a Saturday. That's not how you want to spend your Saturdays usually, as kids. I think Herman wins this game by a few scores. It's, New Madrid they've got to figure some things out. They've got to stop with the penalties. They had 11 penalties. They had as many penalties as I had them with total yards against Dexter.
Jeez.
You've got it. And they're killer penalties too. puts you at third and you're already struggling to move the ball then, and you're 3rd and 15. And then they hit late in the game, they hit a big pass play for like 35 yards or so, and a 15-yard personal foul penalty negates it. They just shoot themselves in the foot with penalties, turnovers, their special teams they struggle with. They've got to get that stuff fixed before they can think they're going to think about winning a game here, and especially against a team like Herman, who's a pretty good team. So I'm going to take Herman there with by several scores.
Yeah, I don't really know much about Herman, but all the problems that you told me about New Madrid County Central, I mean, yeah, like you said, that's things you've got to fix. And so, I mean, I'll be hopeful for the rest of their season, but I don't really see them winning this game either.
They've got winnable games on their schedule. I just don't think this one's one of them.
Next up, Chaffee at Ballard. This is another, we talked about this earlier. This is just another, I don't really know. At least these teams are comparable, being Class 1. Ballard in Kentucky calls it Class 1A, so.
Yeah. I think Chaffee used to play them in the past. Missouri teams used to go over and play Ballard a lot. They're there for several years back, about 10 years ago. And for some reason that kind of stopped. I don't know if the scheduling in Kentucky changed a little bit, but now you've got Chaffee going over there and playing Ballard. And I think it's going to be a fairly even matchup. I'm going to go with Ballard just because they're playing at home. I don't know much about them except for, but I do know that Chaffee had a lot of penalties for a lot of yards, and you can't have that. And when you go into a different state, the officials are a little bit different, and they're going to call you for a little bit more. Then that's not positive. If you're getting called for 16 penalties at home or whatever, in Missouri, you may go over there and get called for even more. I mean, that's just kind of the way it goes a lot of times when you go play out of state teams. And so I'm going to take Ballard since they're playing at home. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I think it'll be a close game, but I'm going to take Ballard in a close one.
I'll take Chaffee just to keep a little Missouri pride into it. But I hope Chaffee gets a win on the season. And if this is a game that they can do it, I definitely hope they bring their A game this week. Next up, Crothersville at Charleston.
I think it's going to be a good game. I believe it's at Charleston, so that's Charleston's not an easy place to play. Crothersville are going to have to go on the road. I still like Crothersville, though. I think they've just got too many athletes in key spots. I think their offensive line is going to be a little bit better than Charleston. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. But I think Crothersville gets them by a score or two.
Yeah, no, I was kind of thinking the same thing. I just wonder how Crothersville defense is going to do against Charleston, just because that's probably one of Charleston's biggest benefits right now is that they've played against defenses that can't really hold them that much. So we'll have to see. I don't really know about Charleston's defense running up against Crothersville offense either, because I think it's going to be a shootout either way.
Yeah, I don't think Charleston's going to be able to hold Crothersville like they held Chaffee, or like they held Malden. I think they're going to be, but if Malden's able to hit some shot plays on them, I'm sure Crothersville will. So I think I think there'll be a lot of scoring, but I think Crothersville's just going to have just a little bit more. I just don't know if Charleston can win a track meet against them, but I think it'll be a little bit closer than what maybe some people think, but I think it'll be a couple scores for Crothersville's way.
Next up, Veritas Christian at Hayti.
Well, you've got me on the Hayti bandwagon now. I'm completely on Hayti's bandwagon now. They're ranked 6th. I thought that was a really nice win against Scott City. I'm expecting them to continue it against Veritas Christian, which I think used to be O'Fallon Christian. And I know that they're not going to be just a team that's just loaded with athletes that's going to be able to keep up with Hayti. So I'm going to take Hayti in this one, that they're going to be able to get the ball to Love there. And as long as they stay healthy, and Love and Ford, I think will take them to a win. Yeah, no, I completely agree. Every point you made, that's about what my thoughts were at. Plus it's at Hayti, coming off a win, going back home and playing this team. I think Hayti's got it locked. Yeah. Next up, Kennett at Kelly. Again, Kennett's got to get healthy. I'm going to take Kelly in this one. Kelly's back home. They're going to be a little upset, I think, losing to Rolla the way they did. I think, like people talking about, how maybe they're not as good as what they thought or whatever. They've lost 2 in a row. I think they're going to be a little salty. Mm-hmm. I think they're going to try to take it out on Kennett. I think it's a team that they're going to be able to score on a little bit, but I think it's going to be a lower scoring game. I think it's going to be something like a 21-7, a score somewhere around that area. But I think that's going to be something that I think Kelly wins that game, but I think it's a low-scoring game.
Yeah, no, I can agree. We talked about Kennett's defense as being probably their best aspect. At the same time, I think Kelly's got the ability to – they kind of play angry like all the time of just like even like their check down passes, things like that. They just do it very quick. And I think that's probably going to come in as a factor against this Kennett team. Like you said, Kennett's offense just – they got nothing going right now. And I don't know how Kelly's defense looks, but if you got nothing going regardless, I think Kelly's going to take this by a couple touchdowns.
Yeah.
So our final game is the game we're going to be covering this week is Scott City at Portageville.
That ought to be a good game. Really, regardless of Scott City losing to Hayti and then Portageville already beating Hayti by several scores, I don't think that you can compare scores on this game. I think that these teams have played some good games in the past, some high-scoring games. I don't think this is going to necessarily be a high-scoring game. I think this is going to be more of a maybe a 22 to 15 game, something's a touchdown. I think it's going to go a touchdown one way or the other. I'm going to go a touchdown toward Portageville. I think they're just rolling right now. They're going to have to stop Underwood in that running game. But I think that offensive line of Portageville, they're going to be able to kind of control the game. And I think it's going to be a low-scoring game, but I think Portageville gets them by a score.
See, like I've said, I'm high on Portageville. Scott City's loss against Hayti, I think they're going to be angry after that, more at themselves than anything. Right. But coming into this game, like I've said, Portageville's fundamentals, they're just strong. And I feel like they can really just wear you down. So, like you said, Underwood's going to be something they're going to have to capitalize on stopping. But, you gotta look at Crump, too. He can throw the ball downfield. Mm-hmm. So you got to be able to stop that pass whenever it comes up. It doesn't come up all the time, but when it does, they can get a core touchdown in there. Like you said, it might just be a one-touchdown differential game. But I think Portageville can do it. They're kind of in that same like vein as Scott City of just like we can run the ball, but when we need to, we can throw a pass that can really just, break that coverage. So I'm looking forward to it. I think Portageville's got this win though.
Yeah, this game may be an hour and a half the way they both run the ball. Just the clock's going to run, and this may be a very quick game. Be home by 9 o'clock type game. But yeah, I think it's going to be a good game. I think we're both on the same page. I think Portageville by a score too, but it's a low-scoring game, a lot of runs, and I think it's going to be the game of the week. That game and the Cape Central Poplar Bluff. I think those are going to be the two games of the week to watch.
I would say so. Definitely going to be the most competitive games. And at this point in the season, I'm just looking for a game that's not a blowout.
Yeah, and honestly, if you go back and you look the last few years, there's been so many blowouts, even in games that you expect to be close. I know that last year I was at that New Matter Portageville game. We're expecting it to go down to the wire, and it was a blowout from start to finish. Just a lot of blowouts, and I don't understand that. I don't, I want close games. Close games are fun to watch, and those are the games that people in our business we enjoy because it makes it a lot more. These blowouts are just like, well, ho hum, okay, yep. Yeah,
no, great for the team that wins, and I'm sure a lot of pride in that for the town. Like if you can hang 40 on a team, no problem. Like that's great, but. For us in the booth and everything like that, it's just like, well, man, this isn't really fun to watch, so nobody really cares. Is that a more recent thing that you've kind of noticed?
The current mindset would be, yes, it's more of a recent thing, but it probably isn't. It's probably been that way for a long time now. I think back, about the last 10, 15 years, offenses have kind of changed. It used to be a lot of running games and things. So back whenever I was growing up a little bit and back into the early 2000s, you had a lot of running games. So your scores were maybe a little bit closer just because you didn't have as many possessions. You weren't running no huddles. You weren't throwing the ball all over the place. So you weren't scoring as much. And so I think maybe your scores were closer, but maybe the games necessarily weren't closer. I can count probably on one hand the number of games that I've seen come down to like the last play or two in a game. It's just kind of your closer games are already kind of decided in the last minute or so. It's a good game, but we weren't able to pull it out. I do remember a Poplar Bluff Sykeston game when Poplar Bluff threw a pick six to lose the game as time expired. That was fun. I've seen Dexter beat New Matter on a throw to the end zone. once, and that was fun. Those are great games, but when people rush the field and everything, that's kind of cool. But you don't see many of those. You just don't see many.
No, I think it's just kind of a difference in mindset too at this point. I mean, you've got such disparity between the classes of teams around here that, once you kind of get more into the meat of the season, I think you're getting more close games depending on what teams play each other. Like we said, we're seeing like Scott City, Portersville, Crothersville, Charleston. Like those are teams that are very comparable at this point. I think for the start of the season, especially with a lot of these teams, it's just like, well, these were going to be blowout games just by looking at the difference in the teams. Yeah. And that's consequence of just closeness to each other. So, I don't know if there's any solution to that. It's just what's the schedule going to look like next year? That's just going to be the difference maker.
Yeah, and I mean, I think each year it's about the same. Your teams that your teams kind of stand out, and there's teams that there's the haves and the have-nots, and that's what you're going to have. And unfortunately, in this area, there's not a lot of your competition is fairly limited. You can't exactly switch. Hey, we're going to be good this year. You're going to be good this year. Let's play. You really can't do that as much because your competition is limited. If you're a team like Chaffee, if you're a team like Hayti, you're looking for games with schools your size, and there's just not that many around here. There's just very limited opponents, and so I think that leads to a lot bigger games. Where I think maybe in the city, where you have a lot of different opponents, you can kind of match up a little bit better on who's going to be good this year and who's not. So maybe that has something to do with it, or maybe we're just overthinking it. I don't know, but it's you want the close games, but you just don't see them very often.
No, I don't know. I don't know what it is. Like you said, maybe we're overthinking it. What I've noticed is some of these teams that get these like surprise like rushes of just like, oh, they're making a play. Mm-hmm. It's teams like New Madrid in the past couple of years where it's like you had two phenom players that just could do it all. And I hate for that to be kind of the deciding factor, because right now we're seeing teams that are so like Cape Central and Dexter, they're great all around. They've got standout players, but they've got multiple standout players. It's not just two guys that can do everything. So I don't know and maybe that's just kind of the tale of like just small town football at this point. Yeah. It's just, do you got somebody who came in and they're just a stud? Well, maybe you'll be good this year.
I think, again, it comes to just the number of teams and how you can schedule. And there's just not a lot of teams in this area. So you're playing, Dexter played Sykeston and New Madrid. Well, they're down this year. It is what it is. I mean, there's not much you can do. There's just nobody, who else you're going to schedule.
Exactly.
It just is what it is. But, hey, they're still fun to watch. And, we'll be out this weekend, watch some more games, and it'll be hopefully we're going to have some close ones. And I think you guys are going to have a close one there with Scott City and Portersville.
No, I'm excited for that. We're already a third of the way through the season. It seems like it's going by super fast already.
Yeah, football season flies by every year. It's just it seems like you start and you're already ending. It's just in a blink of an eye. Just so quick. Basketball season to me kind of drags. You get that into January, 1st of February lull right there. But football season, it always flies by. And I hate that because I love football. But, like I said, we're a third of the way through the regular season. And we're starting to figure out who's the haves and who's the have-nots. And that's and like you said, our top five is pretty much solid. And I think that's going to continue to stay that way.
Nope. I think completely agree with what you said. Any thoughts for the rest of the week, Dave?
No, just hopefully this weather doesn't get too hot. I see a lot of high temperatures coming up for Friday, and I'm just like, man, I don't like those games where it's hot and you have it's constantly cramps and things of that nature. I like the 70-degree nights, and so hopefully the weather cooperates this week.
Yeah, no, hopefully coming off of hurricanes to hot weather. I mean, that's great. That must be wonderful to condition yourself for.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, this has been the SEMO Sports Zone. We thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.